In a fictional live television special taped in Los Angeles, the studio lights of the Jennifer Hudson show glowed brighter than usual. The atmosphere was electric, the audience buzzing with excitement, because tonight's guest was legendary musician Morris Day, known for his charisma, sharp wit, and decades of influence in the world of funk and R&B. Jennifer Hudson had personally invited him for what was supposed to be a heartfelt conversation about music, legacy, and his journey through fame. Backstage, just minutes before going live, Morris adjusted his suit jacket while looking at his reflection. Something about his expression was unreadable, calm on the surface, but carrying a quiet tension underneath. A producer reminded him through the earpiece that the segment would include a few surprise questions from fans and a short tribute montage. Morris simply nodded, saying nothing more than, "Let's just keep it real." When the show went live, the audience erupted in applause as Jennifer Hudson entered with her signature warmth and energy. She introduced Morris Day with admiration, highlighting his influence on generations of artists. Morris walked out with smooth confidence, smiling, waving to the crowd, and taking his seat across from her. For the first few minutes, everything flowed perfectly. Jennifer spoke about his early career, his rise to fame, and his iconic stage presence. Morris responded with charm, cracking a few light jokes that made the audience laugh. It felt like a celebration of legacy, too, entertainers respecting each other on a grand stage. But then the tone subtly shifted. Jennifer leaned forward slightly and introduced a segment the producers had prepared, a discussion about Morris's challenging relationships in the industry over the years. A short clip was played on the screen behind them, showing old interviews and headlines that hinted at disputes, creative disagreements, and controversies from decades ago. The studio audience became quieter. Morris's smile faded just a little. Jennifer continued gently, "You've had an incredible career, but also some complicated moments. Looking back now, do you feel like the industry misunderstood you?" Morris paused longer than expected. His fingers tapped lightly on the armrest. The camera zoomed in slightly, capturing the shift in his energy. "I think," he said slowly, "people like to rewrite stories when it's convenient for them." The audience reacted with murmurs. Jennifer maintained her calm expression, nodding, giving him space. But then the producer cue changed in Morris's earpiece. Another question was about to be asked, one that hadn't been fully previewed during rehearsal. Jennifer glanced at her card, then asked, "There are also reports over the years about tension between you and former collaborators. Some say it was difficult working with you during certain tours. How do you respond to that?" The energy in the room changed instantly. Morris leaned back. His smile was gone now. "I respond by saying," he replied firmly, "that people who weren't in the room don't get to define what happened in it." Jennifer tried to soften the moment. "I understand, but fans are curious." Morris interrupted gently but clearly. "Fans are curious, yes, but there's a difference between curiosity and repetition of stories that don't tell the full truth." The audience became completely silent. A slight tension formed in Jennifer's expression, not anger, but surprise at how quickly the moment had shifted. Then came the turning point. A final question was displayed on the teleprompter, one that had not been discussed in detail during rehearsals. Jennifer hesitated for a fraction of a second, then asked, "Do you think your legacy is fully appreciated, or still misunderstood because of those past issues?" Morris looked down for a moment. When he looked up again, his expression had hardened, not in hostility, but in frustration. "That's the problem right there," he said. "Always circling back to the negative. Always framing the past like it defines everything I've done since." Jennifer tried to interject softly, "That's not what I'm saying." But Morris raised his hand slightly, not aggressively, but firmly enough to signal he wanted to finish. "I came here to talk about music," he said. "About creation. About joy. Not to relive every headline people ever wrote when they didn't understand me." The audience was completely still now. Even the band had stopped moving. A producer off camera signaled something urgently. Jennifer, sensing the intensity, tried to steer it back. "We can absolutely talk about your music," but the energy had already tipped. Morris stood up slowly. The movement shocked the studio. Jennifer looked up at him, surprised. "Morris," he shook his head slightly, not in anger, but in disappointment. "I respect you," he said, "but this isn't the conversation I agreed to." For a brief second, it seemed like he might sit back down. The audience held its breath. Jennifer remained composed but visibly concerned. Then Morris adjusted his jacket again, looked toward the audience, and gave a small nod. "Thank you for the love," he said quietly, and then he walked off stage. The studio erupted into stunned silence. The cameras followed him for a moment, capturing his exit behind the curtain. Jennifer remained seated, visibly processing what had just happened. She turned to the audience and attempted to bring calm back into the room. "We appreciate him being here," she said softly. "Let's just give him respect." Behind the scenes, producers rushed to manage the situation. Some were already debating whether to cut to commercial, while others tried to understand what had triggered the sudden exit. Backstage, Morris stood for a moment in silence. The noise of the studio felt distant now. A crew member approached carefully, but he raised his hand gently. "I'm good," he said simply. There was no shouting, no chaos, just disappointment hanging in the air like dust after a sudden storm. Inside the studio, Jennifer took a breath and continued the show professionally. But the energy had changed permanently. The audience was quieter, more reflective, as if they had just witnessed something unscripted and deeply human rather than just entertainment. Later, in a reflective tone, the production team would describe it not as a fight, but as a collision of expectations between a guest who wanted celebration and a format that leaned into confrontation without fully realizing the emotional weight it might carry. And Morris Day, once again in his quiet space backstage, reminded everyone without saying much at all that even legends have boundaries, and sometimes stepping away is not an act of drama, but an act of control over one's own story.